Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, May 3rd, Town of Corte Madera Town Council meeting. Rebecca, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Beckman?
Here.
Councilmember Mongan? Here. Councilmember Ravazio?
Here.
Vice Mayor Lee?
Here.
And Mayor Casissa?
Here. If we can stand and salute the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. One quick note, just to remind everybody, is that we're doing a hybrid session now, which we started at our last meeting. So again, if anybody would like to join us in person, 240 Tamil Vista Avenue, Hunt Plaza. Otherwise, we're still allowing people to video conference in, so you get double choices. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting up for public comment. This time it gives anybody from the public an opportunity to speak on any topic that is not on our agenda for tonight. You will have 3 minutes to speak. So if anybody from the public wishes to speak, please just go to the podium, please. And then if there's anybody, please raise your hand. And I do see one hand raised so far, which is Pat Ravazio.
Good evening, Pat. You should be able to unmute yourself.
I did. Thank you very much. Really appreciate being able to stay home and not come out. So,
Where are you going? Hey, Daddy's up front and brother's asleep.
Pat, if you could hold, please. I'm going to restart your timer and make sure the audience is muted, and then we'll be right back to you.
yeah.
Those things that we don't always anticipate.
No problem.
Okay. You should be okay. I'm going to restart your timer.
Okay. I'm not going to need 3 minutes. I'm just calling in, and I actually sent an email that I'm wondering if Rebecca could forward with some relevant links to what I'm calling about. And that is this housing debacle, I guess, if you would call it that, the recent audit that was conducted of the RENA numbers and the ABAG's way of reaching those RENA numbers. And it's pretty much been decided that they're arbitrary and unsubstantiated. And I'm hoping that we can do something about that, or at least I want to make sure that you're all aware of it. There was a really strong editorial in the IJ, and they're not really known for taking really strong stands on this kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, I really think we should be exploring affordable workforce housing for essential people like firefighters, police officers, teachers, and others. When I heard the police report last meeting about how our police officers are not able to live anywhere near our area, so they don't have that sense of belonging in our community, and the community doesn't really get to know them as well as they could if they were living in our town. But I don't think we should be bending to the development lobby, which is basically trying to get us to create massive new numbers of marketplace housing units. They're not focused on affordable. So I'm wondering if we can maybe, I know you guys are really, a lot going on, and the bin is full, but if we could agendize just this issue of housing and what it's going to take, what would it take for us to be able to designate some workforce housing. And I'm also interested in senior housing in our community. We remain the only town in Marin County that does not have designated 55 plus housing. So I'm wondering if we can just take another initiative, take another look at how we can start exploring some of these things, and maybe looking at joining the lawsuit by the 4 cities against the anti-single family housing, the 4 units per 1 lot. I think they're looking for other towns to join them in that. So anyway, that's my request. And, Bob listens, and he's a good listener, but I wanted to make sure you all had the opportunity to hear my concerns. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate the comments. I don't see any hands raised, and I don't see anybody from the public wishing to speak. I'm sorry, we have one more. Phyllis Metcalf, you can bring her over, Rebecca.
Okay, and while I'm doing that, I just wanted to let Pat know that I did forward the email to the council, and it should also be uploaded to the agenda as a link to late correspondence hopefully before the end of the meeting, but definitely by tomorrow morning for the public to view. Hello, Phyllis, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. There are just two things I wanted to say to follow up on what Pat said. Having worked with these housing initiatives for more years than I have wanted to, if you want to designate housing specifically for fire service, police service, teachers, etc., you cannot take any federal money. Federal money says that workforce affordable housing must be open to all. As soon as you want to designate it for people within a certain mileage from where they work, etc., do not expect federal money. So I just wanted that clear before the town spends a lot of time trying to research this and find out they can't do what they want to do. That's it.
Thank you, Phyllis. And we have another hand raised, Dave Johnson.
Oh, no.
Good evening, Dave. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a problem signing in. This is the public session, correct?
Correct.
Hi, my name is Dave Johnson and I live in Corte Madera. I'm speaking on behalf of the Corte Madera Climate Action Committee. We're increasingly concerned about the worsening climate crisis and strongly support Corte Madera for taking action to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. The issue that I want to focus on is the use of natural gas, which is methane gas in buildings. This is because use of fossil gas in buildings, primarily for space heating and water heating, produces 1/4 of Marin's greenhouse gas emissions, second only to transportation. The County of Marin has started work on an update of its green building code, which was adopted in 2020. A key focus of the update will be to address the use of fossil fuel in new construction to avoid making greenhouse gas emissions even worse. The County of Marin plans to address two categories of new construction. For completely new construction, including residential, multifamily, and commercial, the county is planning to require that they be all electric, including using high efficiency electric heat pumps, space, and water heaters instead of gas models. It's noteworthy that going all electric will reduce both construction and operating costs. For remodels of existing residences, including single and multifamily, the county is planning to require the renovations to meet a target energy score using a point system that allows for a flexible range of building measures, including heat pump, space, and water heaters. In addition, the county is actively supporting and promoting several voluntary measures and incentives to encourage owners of existing residences to install electric heat pumps, space, and water heaters when their existing gas-fueled models need to be replaced. The county has reached out to engage all Marin's cities and towns to develop the updated green building code with the goal that all 12 Marin jurisdictions adopt the same code provisions effective January 1, 2023. Having uniform county-wide requirements is a big help to big builders and building department staff and will have the greatest impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The county has already conducted 3 outreach meetings, which staff representatives of all 12 jurisdictions are now participating. I want to bring this issue and effort to your attention and request that you take 2 specific actions now. Add the Green Building Code update as an agenda item to the upcoming council meeting so your engagement in this process can be discussed in a public forum.
Dave,
And 2,
Dave, I apologize, but our public comment is limited to 3 minutes and you're running over. What I would suggest if you send an email into Rebecca and she can distribute it to town council members.
happy to do so. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate your time.
Bye.
Don't see any more hands raised. Rebecca, did we get email comments in?
Thank you, Mayor Casissa. No, we did not receive any additional emailed public comments.
Thanks. As I don't see anyone else wishing to speak under public comment, I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting and we'll proceed to presentations. We have one presentation tonight, which is Ashley Howell, our Director of Park and Rec. She's going to give us a recap of Measure A funded park projects in Corte Madera. And Ashley, did I hear your assistant on the line before?
Yes, I apologize for talking with my assistant to make sure that the mute was off, managing both assistants here.
No problem. We always like your assistants. They're more than welcome. Thanks.
They're
Go
for future users and hopefully future staff.
ahead. There you go.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to council today and anybody that's viewing or watching this live. Again, I'm Ashley Howe. I'm your Parks and Recreation Director, and I just wanted to give you a recap of the Parks Measure A funds that have been contributing to some of our projects in town. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Is my screen up and available?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, a little background on Measure A. For parks in 2012, 74% of Marin voters approved a 1/4 of 1% sales tax to support parks, open space, agricultural lands in accordance with this law. Funds raised by Parks Measure A are to be used on parks and open space, agricultural stewardship, recreation, in Marin's 19 cities and towns, and land acquisition. And in 2012, the Measure A had a 9-year term, which sunsetted this last March. In June, Measure A will again be on the local ballot for voters to, if voters approve it in June, Measure A will be re-implemented for the next 9 years. And it's estimated that an average of sales tax generated is about 16 million per year. And background of Measure A funded projects that we've seen in the town of Corte Madera since 2013-2014 fiscal year. You can see it ranges from a variety of from 34,000 all the way up to 113,000. Again, this is tied to our local sales tax. You can see when sales are good in town, we get a better percentage of what we can do. And it shows a little bit of the interest column, as well as once we started expending those funds on our town projects. And I'm going to focus specifically on 3 projects that are the most recent ones. And that would be Town Park Basketball Court, which is a resurfacing, the Town Bark, which is the dog park, which is the new installation, and Skunk Hollow Mini Park, which was a renovation. And the town of Corte Madera utilized $116,390 of Measure A park funds during the fiscal year 2019-2020 and $322,607 in the fiscal year of 2021 towards the following projects. And that was Town Park Basketball Court. And that project was fully funded by Measure A funds at $66,000+. Town Bark was mostly funded by Measure A funds with $10,000 from additional funding. And Skunk Hollow Mini Park at $321,000 and $688,000 was fully funded by Measure A. And to give you a little bit more example of what those projects included, we have the basketball court in the before pictures with the cement, and we had the short area and then the long course. And with the addition of the Measure A funding completed in 2019, we had the resurfacing. We went to just one long court, and we also did the ADA accessibility with the path from the parking lot and sidewalk. And then we have the initiation of Town Bark. We have two of 3 celebrities on the calls today. Emily might also be here. So that was the almost fully funded by Measure A funds. We had other funding of about $10,000, which included some staff time and running irrigation and water lines from an existing water fountain. That project included the fencing, concrete pads, benches, dog washing station, security and gates that were traditional with dog park installations. And Skunk Hollow Mini Park, which was the biggest funded project recently and the most transformation. The first picture is of January 2020, and then the following one is of November 2021 when we reopened it. And as you can see, the security and safety to keep children safe from the street, as well as sidewalk and accessibility, it was included. Swing set, moving the transitioning from away from the wood structures that were weather dated to more sustainable surfaces, but also maintaining the sand play area and water feature, which were very popular in that park. And again, specifically, we had 321,688 funded from Measure A on that project. And you get a closer look of what those improvements made on that, just the playground area. And again, the recap slide, you can see the summary of what our total expenses were for the last 3 projects, as well as just the $10,000 additional funding that was used towards Town Park. And a thank you to the project team and supporters for those 3 projects. And then what's next for us and our plans for the remaining Measure A funds. We're utilizing the estimated balance of Measure A park funds towards purchase and installation of a second permanent restroom for Town Park. And we're estimating those totals. Again, it's a percentage of the sales tax for the fiscal year 21-22 to be $75,660. And 2022-23 of 33 and some change. So about 108 to contribute towards that. And again, in June, Measure A will be on the ballot. And if it's passed, it will be reinstated for another 9 years. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions? No. Okay. Let me go ahead and open up for public comment. If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak on this topic, please raise your hand. If you're in person, please use the podium. And at this point in time, I don't see anybody in person wishing to speak. I don't see any hands raised. And Rebecca, did we get any email comments in?
Thank you, Mayor Casissa. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Thanks. I'll go ahead and close public comment. Ashley, great job, by the way. I think it's a great utilization of funds on those 3 projects. I know that Skunk Hollow Mini Park, that park is totally getting used like all the time. It's loaded up with a lot of kids in there and everybody's enjoying it. You just have to figure out now how to do something with the 3 trees that got torn down or they were taken out. I think they were a fire hazard in the corner there. But in that great job. Thanks. And your cat's in the background, by the way.
Yeah, I know, constantly. Someone's got to participate in this meeting. Yeah, I think those were eucalyptus trees, which are definitely fire hazards.
All right, no other questions or comments? All right, thanks, Ashley. Again, great job.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks. With that, I'll go ahead and turn to the consent calendar. These are items that are normal course of business. They've been previously discussed. Anybody from the town council, town staff, or the public may request that item be removed for further discussion. With that in mind, is there anybody from the town council, staff, or the public that wishes to have an item pulled from the consent calendar? I don't see any hands raised. Nobody from the public is speaking from or going to the podium. And Rebecca, did we get any emails in?
We did not receive any emailed public comment on consent calendar items.
Thanks. With that, I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council for a possible motion. Bob makes the motion. Is there a second? Leela seconds it. Any further discussion? Go ahead and call for the vote.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lee,
Yes.
Mayor Casissa.
Yes. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move into business items. 6A is consideration of possible adoption of resolution number 282022, authorizing the town manager to execute a 5-year agreement with OpenGov Inc. for total amount of $178,890 for planning software and support services. I'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this is part of our work plan. This goes back actually 6 years back, all the way back to 2016, when I began as the town manager. When we hired Daria Carrillo as our finance director, her number one goal was, it was multifaceted, but the 2 key components were to bring our finance system to the 21st century. We really kind of worked from the abacus before that. And so we purchased the Tyler Encode system at that time, and it's been very successful. We were able to streamline everything over, and it's just been really helpful for staff. It's made us really efficient. The second piece of it was to enter a contract, which we did back in 2016, 2017, with OpenGov. And OpenGov was the transparency portal. That was the piece where we could then interact the 2 software systems. They speak to each other and then have it online, have it on our website, where then the our citizens that love the budget can really dial in and really focus on their questions. I think we have one on the call today, in Roy Wolford. And then we can engage the community. And we can also, when we do budget presentations, it's real time. We can show you in real time on the screen and have a conversation. The issue back in 2016, 2017, why we actually canceled the OpenGov movement at that time was because we couldn't transfer over the past years into the Tyler system. So because the way that we ran the budget pre-2016 is different from how we do it today. So it wasn't apples to apples. So 5 years later, Daria's done a great job. We have 5 years now worth of data, and moving forward, we're ready to bring this to you with OpenGov. We're really excited about it. It is expensive, but again, as part of our work plan, it's really important that we have this. When you think about the budget book, it needs to be interactive. And so this will be the last year, if you approve this, that we have the budget as you know it, but moving forward, it'll be completely interactive. And so I'll show you what I mean in a second, if I can use the technology, if we're able to. Rebecca, can you pull up Yountville? So the city of Yountville, they have a really good team over there. And they have OpenGov. They're very similar to us. And I just want to show you kind of how they use their budget book and then how you can. Okay, so like if you go to their main website, this is their main website. Yeah, it's okay. I'm just kind of using my, let's see if I can. Let's go. No pressure. Okay, so this is nice. So this is all the work that we've been doing when we became AAA rated. We did our bonding. We entered all of our policies. This would be now interactive as part of our budget book, right? Everything is tied to fiscal. So you'd have the town manager, finance director's budget message. Then you can go into, it's all linked to the town's vision and strategic plan. That would be all of the work that we've done. It's in one place. Let's see, fiscal policy. So this would be all of our policies. Come on to a roaring start here. How do I go back? I can't see. There you go. Let's see, like I just want to show you one piece here. We should, yeah. You know what? I'm going to stop. So I guess my point, so the difference between what you see now and what you will see. So this would be all online, right? So we go through, this would be as you normally would see it, right? This is what you're used to. This is the Tyler system. And then what they do, you would come down and you would be able to see, the 5-year history trends. Let's go back. It's the same thing. I just wanna... So they have this locked, but what is exciting about this, so this would be specific to us, so their revenues. So what we would want to do on this page, for an example, you would be able to click on the data. So you can go back a few years, but you'd be able to click on any one of these given years and you'd be able to dial into your property tax, to your sales tax. You'd be able to look at information real time and compare it to previous years. We can also lock it where you can just show a specific amount of information and stop it our intent is to fully disclose every dollar. So if you went into a budget page, let's just say on fees for building, you could actually click into our warrant list. You could see everything for that year. You'd see every input and you can ask a specific question. So you're not blind anymore. And the nice thing is, you know, we have about 15 citizens that really love this stuff and really expect us to do the right thing, right? And so they can actually spend a month and really dial into our budget and then come into a council meeting in a public hearing and ask us questions. And I think that's what we want. We want to be able to engage the community like this. So sorry, my presentation isn't what I had hoped it would be. But this was our vision, two-pronged: computerize our budgeting system. And the second piece is to make this completely transparent with the community. The other piece that is nice is now this budget book, every department head, every employee has access to this. So when we talk now to our department heads individually, they can in real time at home, on the cloud, at work, communicate with Daria, input their own information into the system instead of like, you know, writing on a piece of paper, here's the change in my numbers. They input it, they're responsible for it. I can see it in real time, and we can now start to have discussions between the town manager, department head, and the director. It makes us really efficient. And so we're excited about this. If you have an opportunity after to go to the Yountville website, it's sorry I didn't do it justice, but they do a really good job. That is my vision, to fully disclose, you know, our fiscal decision-making. So with that, I'll stop. This is a 5-year contract. The first year is in the implementation. And so OpenGov will implement that 5 years worth of data. And then moving forward, they're right there with us. So they're our staff too. And so they'll make sure however we want to tell that story or show our data, they're available to us for that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Yeah, Eli, go ahead.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Todd. Really helpful presentation. I was just curious, in Code 10, the software that we use right now, is that a subscription that we pay for on an annual basis, or was that like a one-time purchase, or both?
It was both. So it was similar to this. So we pay an annual. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I can get that for you. But yes, we pay annually.
Is the intent to continue paying for that as well?
Yes, there are two different. Yes, we need both.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
So Todd, another question I had, you talk about it being an efficiency, but then you also say it's expensive, right? And ultimately the efficiencies that we gain, do you think offset the cost and then some? You know, like, and can you talk about that? The efficiencies, is it in labor? Is it in accuracy? Is it in transparency, real time, to like where are the real value adds that it brings? Is it all that? Could you just talk about that a little bit more for me in my curiosity?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. Yes, it's all the above. So one, when you think about what Daria does and being able to be efficient with the other department heads and have real life time, right? Everyone takes ownership of that budget, which we all should. The budget book, the time that she spends on it, the time that she has to research and analyze data, because this platform helps you analyze. The Tyler Encode system that we have, it doesn't help you analyze. It puts the information on spreadsheets and then you do the analysis. OpenGov actually does the analysis. So when I talk to Daria, you know, again, we've been talking about this for 5 years. When she wrote the staff report, I asked her, the first question was, how much can this free you up to do other important things? And she estimated about 30 to 35% of her time. It's huge. And it's the analysis is real time. And so that's critical too for all of us, because then we kind of talked about how much time do I spend with Daria on the budget when we analyze things. And for me, that would be about 20%. So those are two big numbers right there that alone justify OpenGov. The other piece though is it's just just a knowledge base too for all the department heads as we think about, you know, all the cost recovery models. We're talking about fees, all the things that we're trying to talk to council about. We're blind too, right? We have real analysis that we can show you, and we can have a discussion with real numbers in real time.
With that broader kind of analysis that OpenGov does, is that in relationship to other peer groups? Like how large is the data set, or how is that informing an analysis that we're basically bringing in even more information about the way that we run the town and the budget? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So OpenGov, all of their client list, and it's pretty broad up and down the state, but in the nation, we have access agreement, we'll have agreements with our respective cohorts. And so we can actually share our data on things. And a lot of times historically it was with the unfunded liabilities of OPEB and pensions, but now we're getting into, our bill, fees and the building department, park and rec. And so we'll have access to our cohorts with data, and actually our directors and our finance directors of how we should look at things, what is available to us, how should we be thinking about things in our decision making. I mentioned Yountville because I really respect their team. And again, they're in our area. So I think it's going to make us better. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah,
One quick one.
Thanks, Todd. Just a quick question. If you could talk a little about any due diligence you did in terms of how you learned about OpenGov, any other programs that we might have looked at, and why this one. I mean, you've really talked about why, but I guess what I'm really trying to get at, did we run the traps and make sure there's no other program that's just as good and half the price?
Yeah, so this has been part of my professional life for 5.5, 6 years. When I first came in, this is what I wanted. This is my major, one of the legacy pieces that we needed to have. And so with OpenGov and the analysis, they were one of the first groups that we were referred to by our cohorts and really impressed with. But we've been analyzing everyone in the industry. Actually, at the 11th hour, we actually came back because we did this analysis a few years ago. We did it again 18 months ago. This is looking at anyone that does this in the nation. And so we actually came back to Tyler Encode, who we use, and we're like, hey, because they are a competitor to OpenGov. We're like, we gave them another chance. Can you do what they can do? And they just can't. They really can't. So from a cost-effective standpoint and from what they provide, they're really at the top of their game. So,
I just have a couple. Just to clarify, the data will go back to 2016.
yes.
Okay, and they'll load that data in, so there's no staff time.
They do everything. Yes, that's as part of the first year fee that you see.
Okay, and then Daria, will she be the, I want to say the administrator, or I want to say controlling that software, in the sense that I think it's great that other staff members like Ashley or Adam will have access to it, but they would only have like view access, right? Because you can't have everybody anytime they want to inputting numbers.
That's correct. So there'll be certain times of the year when we start to plan for the budget 3 months out, where we'll give access to specific budget pages that roll into the budget. But again, Daria will oversee that. I'll assist her with that, and then, but she'll oversee it, and she'll audit it, and she'll give access as appropriate. The other piece that is important, what this does, it does something similar to what Tyler Encode does. So Tyler, right now, when we get audited, we actually give access to our Tyler system to the auditor, and the auditor can actually grab our information in real time. And so this again is along those lines of something that we want to do for efficiency and then full transparency. Like those are our live documents.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? No. Okay, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. If there's anybody from the public wishing to speak, please go to the podium. And anybody that's online, if you want to, please raise your hands. And Rebecca, did we get any emails in?
Thank you, Mayor Casissa. I'm just double checking again, and no, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Thank you. And as I see no members from the public wishing to speak in person, no hands raised and no email comments, I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to Town Council for a possible motion for resolution number 28/2022. Yeah.
One comment, and I'll make the motion too. Todd is being extremely generous. When he took over as town manager and brought Daria in, the town finances were on paper. They were on Excel sheets. They were on legal pads. Our budget came every year in a giant binder this big and about this thick, and we had to go through it page by page. Daria has done an amazing job, and Todd, of getting things moved forward as far as they are. This takes it to the final step and brings us right into the 21st century. So I absolutely move that we do this right now. Thank you.
Thanks. So we have a motion by Bob. I'll go ahead and make the second with a comment. I think in addition to the efficiency and creating extra time, I want to say for both yourself and Daria, I think the other key piece of this is a transparency with the public, where anytime anybody from the public can go on there, access that data. And it seems it's a lot more comprehensive probably than what we have now. It's bringing us into, are we in the 21st or 22nd century? It's
Still 21st.
Thank you. Todd's going, God, does that mean I need to do another software update? To me, it brings us into the 21st century, which I think keys what Bob said. Using spreadsheets nowadays is so antiquated. It's just something we have to do. So I'll second the motion. There's no other comments. No other further discussion. Go ahead and call for the vote.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazia,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lee,
Yes.
and Mayor Casissa.
Yes. We'll go ahead and move to 6B, approval of amendment to the current franchise agreement between the town of Corte Madera and Mill Valley Refuge Service to comply with Senate Bill 1383 regulations. Maria's been biting at the chip to get into this, so you're up.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor and members of the Town Council. So this staff report includes the current franchise agreement that we have with Mill Valley Refuge Service. And if you recall, back in November, we discussed Senate Bill 1383, which is going to be coming up a lot, which was a bill that was created to reduce organic waste disposal by 75% and increase edible food recovery by 20% by 2025 in the state of California. And when that bill was created, basically Cal Recycle was granted the authority to create regulations to achieve those targets. And through their authority, they adopted regulations and created a model ordinance for jurisdictions to use, which is what you all approved through the adoption of ordinance number 1011. And part of the requirements of SB 1383, includes a lot of provisions and a lot of reporting, and it's mandatory by the state, and all of these mandates are unfunded. So in order to comply with the requirements of this law, R3 Consulting has been collaborating with the agencies that are a part of that our service through Mill Valley Refuge Service. And we need to make some adjustments to the current franchise agreements through an official amendment in order to have Mill Valley Refuge Service basically undertake the majority of the inspection, education, and outreach requirements of the law, and also monitor contamination and conduct compliance reviews. And currently, none of those responsibilities are in the franchise agreement. And the adoption of this amendment would secure the services that we need as a town to allow the town to proceed with the mandatory compliance of the law, which is not optional. And just so you are aware as well, any failure by a local jurisdiction to enact and undertake all of the responsibilities may result in fines up to $10,000 per day. So there are a lot of things that we are responsible for, and that's why this amendment is important and before you today for consideration to approve. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Are there any questions? Yeah, Eli.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Lorena. So it says in the staff report that part of this action declares the intention of the town to implement a 3-container organic waste collection service. So I just wanted to confirm what the 3 containers are, because if we've got trash, dual stream recycling, which is 2, and then organics, that's 4, which seems like a lot of bins to ask residents to be managing. That's the status quo. But I'm just wondering, does this mean that we're going back to single stream recycling or what?
Right. Or previously, there were a lot of businesses that were not signed up for organics service. For example, our dealerships, they're not producing that much waste to the point where they need a whole bin for it. So since it's mandatory, in order to cover those requirements, we can allow businesses to be exempt if they're not producing that much waste, but we have to go and do an inspection, make sure that they don't have like more than 2 cubic yards of waste, and then have them fill out an exemption form. And then we have to keep a record of that in order for them to do that. But previously it wasn't a requirement, and now it's mandatory for all businesses and multifamily dwellings, which is why that's one of the things that's added on here. So it is still garbage, recycling, and compost.
And recycling is remaining dual stream.
The way that Mill Valley Refuse Service handles it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I do have one. Under fiscal impact, it mentions that that we should keep in mind that there will be costs associated with the enforcement of this. Can you say or explain what the costs you're talking about
what that's
are?
going to require is basically someone like right now, I kind of do this in a way through the Zero Waste Marin grant that we receive. We go and do education and outreach to our local businesses to make sure that they know how to sort trash and things like that. But now that they're required to do that, someone from staff has to go and make sure that everything that we're going to receive from Mill Valley Refuse Service is actually accurate reporting. So we're going to have to go and do inspections, and that takes staff time and things like that. It won't be like on a monthly basis or anything like that, but all of the requirements do require that staff do some of the work aside from the other reporting that gets done through Mill Valley Refuse Service.
So has staff time been built in
this report? No.
Okay.
Right now, enforcement doesn't start until 2024, which is why I couldn't provide an idea of how much that's going to cost, because I'm not really sure how time consuming it's going to be. We were given an idea of like things that we need to check. For example, part of the SB 1383 requirements is that there's businesses are assigned, certain businesses from a small list for Corte Madera specifically are signed up for edible food recovery. So we have to, at some point, go to the business, make sure that they have a list, and make sure that we review an actual agreement with the companies that are recovering food. And that would be maybe like an hour of my day or something. So, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to be reviewing and how much time, or if it's even going to be me. So that's why I couldn't provide an actual amount of cost for staff time.
It sounds like we may have to play it by ear to see how it plays out.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, just to clarify, does this apply to residential also, or is it just businesses?
Residential as well, but our residents are required to be signed up for all 3 streams, I believe.
All right, thanks. Are there any other? Yeah, Charles.
So for commercial, if there's gross offenders that are not complying and the town identifies them, are there civil penalties that we're assessing that ultimately would bring money back into the budget to deal with difficult situations?
Yes, I believe our agreement right now does have a fee that we charge for contamination. And I can't recall what it is, but Mill Valley Refuse Service does charge businesses when they have to go back and basically dump everything in your green bin as garbage because it's contaminated with products that aren't supposed to be in there. And we are going to be able to acquire those fees and collect them for the town, because that is something that we do have to manage, and we can't pass that on to another agency to handle.
So the way, just to clarify what I think I understood, is that Mill Valley Refuse has the ability to basically add on to the bill to deal with polluted waste streams because they're putting it in the wrong can. But if they're in non-conformance by not accepting the new ordinance or anything like that, ultimately, we do. So I guess Amy wants to speak to it a little bit.
Right. So we brought to you before the ordinance implementing these new regulations, and our ordinance for violators allows for administrative citation and penalties and other civil and remedies if we want. This is just an amendment to our franchise agreement so that Mill Valley Refuse is now taking on some of the additional responsibilities that the state law requires. Some of it is confusing because, this was an implementation of a state law. And, the Bay Area counties are a little ahead of other areas of the state. We've already, Marin and San Francisco have already had compost, recycle, and solid waste, but that's not uniform throughout the state. So it's somewhat of an imperfect fit for us because we've already been doing a lot of this. The main new component is the food recovery that's required of larger retailers. And so that's some of it. And a lot of the new requirements are phased in over time. One of the things is we'll be the town, every city is going to be given a certain tonnage of compost that we're going to have to purchase over time. And so we're going to start seeing some changes. It's interesting because I looked at this in the franchise agreement because we get a credit for 10% of our compost under this agreement, but we'll actually end up having to purchase more, which is interesting. But a lot of the enforcement isn't going to happen till down the line. And I think Cal Recycle is going to be seeing how this plays out. And I expect we'll see some adjustments over time as cities and towns throughout the state start implementing.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks. Go ahead,
Good
Lisa.
question. Thanks, Lorena. Sorry. Since Mill Valley Refuse Service will be taking on additional responsibilities, I would imagine they want to be compensated for that additional time. Will this be reflected in people's garbage rates, or do you have a sense of what effects we might see there?
At this time, let me see what I wrote.
I guess while you're looking that up, to Amy, wouldn't they have to come back to us if they wanted to do any rate increases?
That's correct. And they're
Yes.
not, it'll be the next item, but they're not requesting a rate increase for this upcoming year.
Okay, thanks.
I did not have any information on actual rate increases regarding these amendments. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then one quick question for Amy. For some reason, I noticed on page 13 of the proposed amendment, where the people sign off, where it says approved to as form, it just says town council.
That would be me.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I guess I could
That's
say
on me.
town attorney, but R3 sort of drafted this as sort of a blanket template for all of the folks. If we tailored it, and I didn't change town attorney.
Okay, all right, thanks,
Yeah.
no problem. With that, are there any other questions? Eli, go ahead.
I've got one other question that we may not have an immediate answer to, because I don't know if we have anyone from Public Works on the line. But Amy, I was glad that you brought up the like purchasing mandates, shall we call it? Because that's kind of the strangest part of this to me. So I was just wondering, is that material that we have to procure, is that replacing like non-compost derived mulch or something that we would otherwise be buying? Or is that like is the state just like, hey, by the way, buy 50 tons of compost a year that you weren't, that you have no need for, or haven't identified a requirement for?
I can, so we've been looking into this with RJ, and basically we do use mulch like in our playgrounds and the dog park. And as long as we purchase them from the sellers that are listed, I believe under section 12, it has to be certain sellers that we buy that from in order for it to count towards the, I believe, 700 or 70 tons. I'm not sure of the amount that, yeah, we do have to provide. And yes, that's one of the parts that I've asked a lot of questions on, because basically they're saying you have to do this and you have to pay for it. And what I guess a lot of cities are thinking of doing is doing giveaways. So you just buy all of the material and have like an event where people come and fill up sacks, I would assume, and use that themselves. But yeah, we are going to be required to fulfill those requirements.
Okay, thank you. And whatever number I said was totally made up. So
Yeah,
thank you.
and I think everybody's really shocked by this.
But it sounded good at the time.
I guess I want to dig into this a little bit more. So with that, is that a negotiated rate that they come up with each year, or is that like per vendor, or ultimately what's setting the price of the organics cost? Is that the state?
I'm not
to pay whatever price the state dictates.
The state sets a procurement target.
Target.
And as our consultant said, Cal Recycle has acknowledged that the procurement targets are ambitious, and R3 is not aware of any city or town that is expecting to meet their full procurement target at this time, much less actually be able to spread 100% of the material annually. So stay tuned. And I think that it's set by it may be set by population.
correct.
Yeah, I think that's right.
They're still trying to figure that out. And actually, we just had our annual like review that we do with Cal Recycle, and I did ask those questions. And if there are penalties because we aren't fully compliant, they won't really be because of the procurement part of the law, because they still don't know how they're going to handle all that and make us do all of the things we're supposed to do under that part of the law.
Can you clarify one more thing for me? So when we say compost, there's a lot of byproducts and recycling products that could be used in town functioning. I mean, are we really only talking about the mulch or the soil kind of composting? Or are we talking?
They gave us a list. I think there were like 6 different categories. I can't recall at this time, but there are other options that we can look into.
Okay.
So our target is 802 tons per year.
Right. Of what?
Organic waste.
Stuff. Thank you. Please let me know when we have a better understanding of that.
Would you like the details on the stuff?
Yes.
And there is a report that R3 is going to be providing. They've been doing some work with all of the Mill Valley Refuse Service agencies. So once that is officially published, I can share that with all of you so you can look at all of the recommendations and requirements and things like that.
I have one other question for you. Does this apply to the community center?
Yes, I will, the whole town.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, I'll go ahead and open it for public comment. Did you have anything else on you? Thanks. I'll go ahead and open it for public comment. Anybody wishes to speak that's present, please use the podium. If you're online, please raise your hand. And Rebecca, did we get any email comments in?
Thank you, Mayor Casissa. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Thanks. And with that, I don't see anybody from the public wishing to speak. See no hands raised and no email comments. So I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to town council. And we are looking for a possible motion to approve the amendment to the current franchise agreement between the town and Mill Valley Refuse Service.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Eli seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead and call for the vote.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lee,
Yes.
and Mayor Casissa.
Yes, we'll move to 6C. This is an information only item. Therefore, no action is requested, or no action is necessary. Comparison of Mill Valley Refuse Services historical profit achievement to rate application projections. That's a mouthful.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the
Thanks,
council.
Lorena.
Thank God for Lorena on that 1383, I gotta tell you. That's one of the most frustrating things. Okay, so this is a follow-up from the rate hearing regarding Mill Valley Refuse Service. They're at our rate hearing back on June 15th of 2021. Council asked us to follow up with R3 Consulting. They do they're basically the consultant we rely on to oversee the Mill Valley Refuse rate increases in budget. And so they did complete that analysis. It's attached to your report. And they found that Mill Valley Refuse is working within the guidelines per all franchise agreements for all the member agencies within that service zone. Page, let's see, your attachment, I just wanted to show you the two tables. It's your first attachment. It's a basic quick overview, how they set the operating ratio allowance. And you can see for fiscal year 18, 19, 19, 20, and 21, 22. Can you put that up on the screen for me? Basically, their operating ratio allowance that they have to be under on this evaluation is 1.5 million for fiscal year 18-19, 1.5 million for 19-20, and 1.7 for 21-22. If you go to table 2, do you all have that attachment? Okay, I'll wait.
If Rebecca could bring it up, I think it'd be great.
That's it. No, that's the table. Yeah, right there. 70-inch TVs just aren't looking as big as they used to. Over here in the corner, I'm in the North 40. Okay, so table 1 again is setting the operating ratio. So what this number is, it's basically their profits can't be over that after all their operating expenses. And so for this 3-year analysis, those numbers range from 1.5 million to 1.7. On table 2 is an analysis that shows their revenues to expenditures. You can see those there. For 17, 18, 19, and 20. And at the bottom is basically their total income after their revenues to expenditures. And so you can see where they landed. A couple of the numbers that jumped out at me, again, they're below the 1.5, 1.7 ranges for 19, 20. But you can see that really big jump where they got to $1 million. And, you know, we had in that time, again, it was the recycling issues and everything we talked about. Those are pretty significant jumps that are tied to pretty significant rate increases. So technically they're within the franchise agreement. So that's what we can tell you. Behind the scenes, I'm working with our cohorts. Tiburon is in Mill Valley specifically. You know, we are all in franchise agreements. Ours expires in 2026. And, you know, to get out of that franchise agreement, you have to have, what is the exact language?
Essentially,
Yeah.
non-performance.
Basically non-performance. And so they're changing, their ownership is under change right now. It's been going on over the last 6 months. And so what we're going to do is we're going to individually, but together as agencies, engage Mill Valley Refuge to see what their long-term plans are. My recommendation is when we get to the end of the year and we start to look at the 2023 work plan, we grab 1 or 2 council members with the town attorney, myself, Lorena, and our cohorts in the other jurisdictions and start to evaluate our options as we move forward. So Recology, any other services, use our climate action committee too. I think we'll be perfectly positioned to kind of evaluate, you know, some of that as well, like what we would look at for specific services. Mill Valley Refuge doesn't exactly provide the full network of services that we will need moving forward. And so I think there's some openings for discussions in a way, if we were to, let's just say hypothetically, if we were to exit the agreement or clue to them that we're interested in that, as long as we had a thoughtful withdrawal plan, I think, you know, we could probably work something out before 2016. So I know it's at the top of the minds of some of the council members. We talked about it a little bit at our last work plan. So I'm happy to put something on the agenda for the council in the next couple of months and start to put things in motion of at least a working group to start to evaluate everything. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, Eli, go ahead.
Thanks, Fred. Thank you, Todd. So I think you said, but I just wanted to confirm. So when we're talking about this, 11.11% profit margin, that's a cap, right? That's a ceiling. And so I got a little bit of a problem with the way part of this report is written. It says MVRS, their operating income did not achieve the allowable profit. And it seems like maybe a more appropriate way of phrasing that would mean they didn't meet or breach the ceiling of what's allowed. So that just struck me as a little bit odd. So I just wanted to confirm that I was understanding that is a cap. And then my other question was, when we see income from operations or essentially profit, right, at the end of table 2, that's after paying all the salaries, all the benefits, so is that money just into the pockets of the, the 3 families that own the business or whatever, just to try and understand here?
Yeah, I want to be careful how I answer that, because I don't know
Sure.
what happens if it goes back into the company as reserves, or how they actually set that up. I'm happy to answer, follow up for you.
Yeah.
That was different terminology for me too. Again, I had to go back and kind of look into it, but you do understand it correctly.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
If I recall correctly, they had also talked about an increase due to upgrades in equipment, new trucks and purchases. And I was wondering how that would fall in, because I thought that those were special line items that weren't part of the general. It was like a one-time, or is that included in these operating expenses per one of these years that we see?
Yeah, these are total expenses, so they should be there. Yeah, absolutely.
We're asking if those were part of the pass-through expenses, or?
Well, so ultimately you see, for total expenses, you see a trajectory of similar numbers, but then, we'd also authorized, I think, and part of the discussion was about buying new trucks. Right. And so I don't see a large or increase or decrease based on that. So I don't know if it fell as a separate line item in the contract that basically doesn't fall under usual total expenses, and it was a one-time or something that's not seen here.
I can easily get that follow-up for you to look at. Just at a high level, I know, again, when you look at the table 2, the consultant touched on a little bit, you're trying to do apples to apples, right? Because you're looking at the audited reports, financials. And so he tried to break them out a little bit.
Right.
But when they did those big truck purchases, I believe that was in 18-19. And so that's where you see that big jump.
But the purchase might have had 2018, and that's why
right, where they kind of roll about 16.5, 16.9, and you saw it jump to 18.5. That was their big purchase. But again, to the profits, what they do, I know they do reinvest in their company. I just don't have an answer for that, but they're very transparent. I mean, I can ask and disclose that.
I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Just a quick question. We were talking about trying to understand the profits. So this takes into account operating expenses, and that includes salaries. So if an owner of the company is taking a salary, that could be in addition to any profits that we're seeing in that profit line number.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Then Todd, you may have hit upon this, but between 2018-19, net profits went up like 4 times. Went from like 207,000 up to like 800 and some odd thousand. Do you know why that it was
more than
quadrupled? Yeah, why it quadrupled plus? It just seems, these other years it jumped about, well, it actually went down, but like the last couple of years, it's like about 100, less than 100,000. It's like 50,000 or so. But those 2 years, there's a significant jump.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think they would look at $1 million profit is what they would want, I'm sure, right? I mean, I'm just assuming. But I know going again from 18-19, they were doing a lot of upgrades. We also had some increases, and I feel like those increases didn't evaluate, those out years, because you didn't have those big equipment purchases. That's why you saw the jump. And the question then is, well, it goes in a profit. I mean, it's in the franchise agreement, so it's hard to criticize them when it's in all of our agreements.
They're following what they're supposed to be doing according to the legal agreement, essentially. And if I heard it right, the only out we have is for non-performance, right? So if there's a change in ownership, that doesn't give us an out?
No.
Okay.
I do think there's an open for, if the council seriously wants to go this route, I think to get a smaller working group and to engage them, because I think the timing, if we're going to consider it with this change, I think we should start the discussion sooner than later.
Okay, all right, thanks. Any other questions?
But I was just I can maybe answer your question a bit. If you look at what happened, 2018, their expenses were 18.5 million. 2019, their expenses were 16.5 million. So there was a $2 million drop in expenses, which is what income from operations went up so much. So something jumped big there.
Maybe it was equipment purchases.
Yeah, probably.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this, please go to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand. Rebecca, did we get any email comments in?
We did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Thank you. As we have nobody from the public wishing to speak, no hands raised, no email comments, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And again, this is informational only, so there's no action on our part that's required. With that, we'll go ahead and move to council reports, town manager's report.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. And again, there is a letter on the back of that last staff report that they are not requesting a rate increase this year, which was probably a good move.
It's a good move or a smart move.
I wanted to mention in open time, there was a comment regarding the green building code update, and it's true the county is working on that now. They've actually engaged all the other planning and building departments. So Chris Ragland, this is going to be one of Chris's first really big projects of how he engages the cohorts in the county, our community and council on problem solving, best practices moving forward. But he's engaged in that. Our intent from a process standpoint isn't to take an agenda item to council to get your feedback at this point. It's to collaborate countywide to have the best practices and recommendations, bring that through the Climate Action Committee as an update and get those comments, and then take that to council as an informational item or an item to get feedback and hopefully approval. But so that's how we see that, but that's a priority. That's on our work plan for this fiscal year. So that will move forward quickly. The other thing is staff is working closely with MMWD on a variety of issues regarding the drought. One of the things that we're doing, working with Park and Rec, we're bringing in experts right now to give us some evaluations and options on the multi-use, to looking at Town Park as from a multi-use field standpoint, how we're using part of that park specifically for fields, and what are our options in the playbook at this point to improve them, to maintain, not even maintain, we need to improve them and then maintain them. And so what are our options? Giving them some cost analysis and then engaging MMWD at the same time for potential variance, because water is going to be involved. So how do we do that? And so that is ongoing. We also are going to have some community members give the council a presentation at one of our next couple meetings about potentially a community garden. And that is one of the things that may be exempt when you have edibles. One of the things when Mayor Beckman, when you were the mayor, Councilmember Beckman, we worked at San Clemente Park and with Cove School, the superintendent over there, on using the devil strip that is in the corner, we call it. A lot of times it gets overgrown and we have to spend money on maintenance. We're looking at that area for potentially on the east side of town, a community garden. And so we're kind of excited. They put a lot of thought and effort into this. And so I thought it would be good to bring it to council so you can hear that. You're not asked to approve anything. It's informational only. But as we go, it may be a public-private partnership opportunity for the town to consider when we start talking about capital improvement projects. Again, engaging MMWD on that and what the options are there. But really excited moving forward with that. I'll just stop there. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Todd, one quick question, just to clarify, because this has come up on the fields. There's no decisions have been made what to do with those fields, right? Just to clarify.
Yeah, that's correct. There are no projects that have been approved by or have been developed by staff. We're going through the master planning process right now.
Okay,
so there's
because
no
I know
project.
that's come up where things are being planned. As far as I know, they're not.
That's correct.
Okay,
And
thanks.
one last thing, our consultant on the PG&E, he is finishing up the PG&E undergrounding report. And so the draft we should have that in the next 30 days. So I know a lot of people have been asking for that. So we'll share that with everybody. Really excited.
Thanks. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and go to town council reports, Bob. Thanks. Eli?
Thank you. Had a MCCMC Water Policy Committee meeting. And then I've got another one this week, and basically we're just working there on. We're going to try and put together like a sort of like executive summary of the report, the large report that we're working on, and we're hoping to present that executive summary before MCCMC has its like summer recess. Rebecca, which summer meetings do we cancel? Do we know?
July and August. are
Okay, so I think we're going to aim.
22nd is the last.
We're going to aim to have something by June, something brief, and then that'll presage a fuller report down the road. MCCMC Legislative Committee meeting and the big MCCMC meeting a couple of weeks ago, last week. And then the League of Cities North Bay Division had their division meeting, their quarterly meeting in Vallejo last week. It was fine. If you didn't make it, you didn't miss too much. We were supposed to have an assembly member speak and they bailed on us. So we ended up just having the president of the League of Cities come and talk up the League of Cities. But it was nice to be back in person again with the cohorts. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Neva?
I just would mention we had a Casablanca steering committee meeting, and just a reminder for everybody that the open house is this Friday from 1 to 3, and everyone is welcome to come check out the new renovated property.
Thank you. Charles?
I attended the Transportation Authority of Marin meeting this month. I thought that there was a lot of positivity and understanding of infrastructural funding coming up. They talked a lot about federal funding and identifying even more sources for the regional area. One that they think has a lot of potential is overpass funding, particularly for areas that need better access. I think they had identified the Canal District and somewhere in Novato or other place in Santa Fe as well. But ultimately, I think pedestrian traffic over the freeway is good anywhere we can get it. So, and then the other one was they talked a little bit about closing out the call for concepts for electric infrastructure funding. This is a strategy where they're trying to collect ideas or proposals or projects to identify best of concept to then even start working towards creating funding mechanisms at higher levels and working with their constituents across the state and federal funding. I think they had 23 proposals. The municipalities were anywhere between schools, cities, the smart buses. So everyone contributed, and it went across a whole board of different, they're really focusing on large equipment, wanting to electrify it. So fleet equipment, but not just cars or bicycles, and then also the charging infrastructure for it. And then any other, I think that we might see some really creative ideas that could be really exciting. So I look forward to the release of that. They're actually vetting the programs right now to understand which ones they want to bring to the public. So should be a really nice read to understand where we want to go and how we can mobilize to make that happen. So.
I have a hard time with those things too. Thanks. And then I attended the MCCMC Economic Recovery Committee. Just one thing there that was more fascinating than anything else, but there's a group that came, I think they were called PACER AI, Artificial Intelligence. It was just fascinating. They just pulled data from a number of sources, but they pulled data, I think, from like the last Marin County Fair. And out of 2,000 people that they were able to determine that was there, they were able to determine that 144 some odd thousand attended that. They were able to look at traffic patterns, demographics on all those people. They overlay all kinds of information. At the committee level, it was brought up that potentially is that a tool that the county could get and then maybe filter that down to the towns and cities. Because there's just a wealth of information that filters back into businesses also. Somebody said it was kind of like Big Brother, but it was just fascinating with the amount of data. I also attend the MCCMC regular meeting, and also there's a selection committee. Really nothing to report there. One thing that was interesting though, I think on the selection committee, we're discussing speakers, and a council member from another town or city brought up that he went to our farmers market here in town center, and he was amazed that we had staff there that was promoting our housing element. He was just really impressed with that, and it's kudos to our staff for that, that he would even bring that up. I thought it was great. And then I also attended Twin Cities Disaster Preparedness Committee. One thing with that is Mark Brown from with MWPA. I think he's hitting the circuit because he was at our town council meeting. He was at the Mayor's Forum, which went really well. He was at MCCMC, and I think the bottom line, it's the same message: high fire season. Everybody needs to be on alert. And with that, I don't have anything else. We do have the draft agenda for our next meeting, which is May 17th. And if there's no further business to come before the council, I will go ahead and adjourn the town council meeting. And we do have a sanitary district 2 meeting. So with that, Rebecca, can I get a roll call, please?
Board Member Beckman.
Here.
Board Member Mongan.
Here.
Board Member Ravazio.
Yes.
Board Vice President Lee.
Here.
And Board President Casissa.
Here. At this time, I'll go ahead and open up the SD2 meeting for public comment. If there's anybody from the public wishing to speak on a topic that's not on our agenda, you can either go to the podium, raise your hand, or email. And with that, do we get any emails in, Rebecca?
We did not receive any emailed public comments for open time.
Thank you. And with that, I see nobody wishing to speak that's here and present, and there's no hands that are raised. So I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion. We have no presentations tonight. We do have a couple items or a few items on our consent calendar. These are items that have been previously discussed. They don't require further discussion. They can be approved by a single motion. Any member of the district board staff or the public may request that an item be pulled for further discussion. So with that, is there anybody from the public present that wishes to pull item for discussion? I don't see any hands raised on via video conferencing. And did we get any email comments in?
We did not receive any emailed public comments on the consent calendar.
Thanks. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion for consent calendar. And we're looking for a motion to approve consent items 4A through 4C.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, go ahead and call for the vote.
Board Member Beckman.
Aye.
Board Member Mongan.
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio.
Yes.
Board Vice President Lee.
Yes.
And Board President Casissa.
Yes, we have no public hearings. There's no business items. Todd, do we have a district manager report?
No reports.
Thank you. And are there any board member reports? Any board member reports? Okay, with that, and then we have the draft agenda for our next meeting. If there's no further business, I'll go ahead and adjourn the SD2 meeting. Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. Another great job.
Record time.